Right. So I'm sort of I'm going to talk a little bit about basically the things that I'm working on and sort of why I work on them and how I think about working on these problems, because I think we're all working on difficult, interesting problems, and there's a lot of space for us to do good work. But the more we can understand how and why we do that work, the better, I think. So basically, I'm working on a project I've been for a little over a year called Poetica, which is basically online collaborative copy editing. So it's interesting in that it's taking a lot of sort of relatively high technology and trying to make it accessible in a very low technology kind of way. And I'm a technologist, but Poetica is not for poets per se. It's for anyone who sort of writes. But working on it and working in thinking about writing and thinking about writers' process and these sorts of things got me thinking a lot about poetics and what are the poetics of our field. So start with the poetics of the canvas, and I'm going to start talking about that. I love this thing. There's this guy Ian Boas, who's a game designer, and he's fantastic. He built the best game in the world. Sadly, you can't play it anymore, but it really was the best game. It's called Cow Clicker, and it was a game for Facebook. And basically, the way that the game worked was you could click on a cow, and the cow would go moo, and then you had to wait 6 hours, and then you could click on the cow again. Very addictive game. But there was more to it than that, of course. When you clicked on your cow, it would give you the option to share your click on your Facebook timeline. And you could tell all of your friends that you clicked on the cow, which is brilliant. And then they, in turn, could then click on your click. And if they did that, then you would both get Mooney, which you could use to buy cows that looked different than the cow that you had, which you could then click on once every 6 hours. It's a beautiful little condensation of all of these games on Facebook where you're just sort of clicking the sort of harvest dynamic. What was Farmville, I think is what it was called. But it's sort of a meditation on what are we actually building? What are the actual dynamics? And to be fair to Mr. Bogost, he's also done some really amazing things. So this is, I don't have audio, but it's fine, we can watch. So this is a game called A Slow Year that we made, and it's 4 seasons. So this is fall. And the way that you play this season, you've got this box, and leaves fall, and you try and catch them. With winter, you're drinking a cup of coffee, hopefully slowly enough that you get to watch the sunrise, but not too quickly, slowly enough that the sun rises, but not too quickly that the coffee goes cold. Right. Anyways, spring is thunderstorms, and you count the time between lightning flashes and thunderclaps. And then the last one is summer, and basically your objective is to sit by a river nodding off. And I think that's, so this was released in 2011 for Atari 2600 on a cartridge. And I think it's sort of a beautiful perspective on how we think about the things that we're making. The perception of video games when they came out was this sort of very rapid fire, crazy interaction. We still have this with first-person shooters where everything's just flying at us from everywhere. And actually, we can think about games in a very different way. We can sort of step back and say, what are the emotive or the human reactions that we're trying to elicit with games? And I think one of the most important things for me that I've realized in the past few years is that what we're actually doing, the project with the internet, is, in the McLuhan sense, where the medium is the message, the internet is really a medium to create other mediums. So that is the medium of the internet, of mediums. So with a painting, you have a canvas that you paint a picture on. With a newspaper, you publish that and you send it off, and with television, it's sort of this broadcast medium. But the internet is this very reflexive thing, where when we create something on the internet, or with technology in general, it's that thing itself is a medium that people can interact with. It's not just a broadcast thing. It's not just a static thing that we've created. And we create them all the time. So it's changed the way that we think about how we interact with one another. In the medium of the message sense, like the iPhone is the message, and Flickr is the message, and Instagram is the message, and Arduino is the message, and everything that we build with all technology is its own message, and we need to consider what those interactions and what those the shape of the things that we're creating, what those are. So in that sense, being a technologist is, like today, being a web developer or hardware designer, isn't just building or designing, it's a meta practice. So it's not art or literature or theater or music or engineering or architecture or theory, it's all of them, all the time. And we need to sort of, we need to be thinking about these things and integrating them together. So I'll talk a little bit about sort of how I started working on Poetica and where it came from, and sort of how I think about structuring what it is. And it started with a MacGuffin. So a MacGuffin is a film term that refers to basically an object in a film or a conceit in a film that's not actually, it plays no role in the film. So the Maltese Falcon appears at the beginning of the film. It's the title of the film. By the end of the film, nobody even remembers that it exists. They're all chasing after it, but it just sort of disappears halfway through the film. And it's just a motive to get the plot going. And I think for me, there were two MacGuffins really. One was GitHub, and the other was Word, Microsoft Word. And I sort of was looking at both of these tools and saying there has to be something that meets in the middle. Like there has to be something that does both of these things. On the one hand, you've got word track changes, which writers use to collaborate and get feedback and whatnot. But it's this very static tool that it's not the internet. It's from 1992 or something like that. And then on the other hand, you've got GitHub, which is very difficult to use, and neither really satisfies the needs of quite a large number of people. But what we realized was that actually the technologies, the specific tools and the way that they represent things and the way that you interact with them actually has very little to do with what people want and need. So the process of sort of collaborative feedback, getting feedback on writing, having it is a conversation. You're not handing over your writing for someone else to rewrite. You're not collaborating with them in the sense that you might with code in GitHub. You're actually having a conversation with them and getting that sort of reflexive feedback. And really, the process of editing is about human relationships. It's not about technology. It's not about having tools to support your work. It's about being able to have a conversation and come to a better understanding of what you're doing. So if somebody can say, I think you're doing this wrong, because this reason, you are going to have a better understanding, and the thing that you're working on is going to end up being better. And so really, at the end of the day, we need to, and especially with what I do, we need to focus on what are the social problems that we're solving, not what are the technological problems. I'm going to sort of get into that a little bit more. And then the other thing is joy, like especially when I look at track changes, when I talk to people about track changes, mostly what I hear is hatred. It's, the things that we're creating should be to support happiness and to support, people getting excited about what they do and being able to think about the things that they care about, and be excited about them. Often I think technology gets in the way and causes people frustration and yet, in some ways helps them do the things that they want to do, and in some ways ends up just frustrating them. So I think in terms of what we're actually trying to do, and to sort of touch on the social things a little bit, we talk a lot about these social like fire hoses and streams and rivers and all of this information going by, but actually we talk about analyzing these rivers of information, but actually rivers we don't think of them as the water that's passing through. We think about them in terms of the banks and the sort of the erosion and the construction that we do around rivers. That's what defines a river. And so when we're thinking about technology, when we're thinking about how we sort of engender interactions, don't pay attention to the data, right? There's focus on big data and how we analyze that. Pay attention to the structures that we use to sort of direct the data and the way that the data shapes the structures themselves. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how version control works and how we sort of come to think about this interaction. So this is everyone on GitHub? I'm curious. So like 2/3? Okay. So this is a sort of network graph visualization of a GitHub repository, and each dot is a commit, so a atomic piece of work. Each colored line is one person, and the places where they intersect are where people merge work together. It's fairly straightforward. It's really amazing. This has been a proper revolution, I think we can safely say, in the way that we do software development, because it's enabled us, compared to using Subversion or CVS in days gone by, it's enabled us to collaborate much more quickly and much more effortlessly on the things that we're building, and it's a big deal. It's helped enable a lot of the open source projects that have been so successful over the past 5 years or so. But it's not easy. So this is from last year when GitHub got their $100 million funding or whatever. The repository sounds bad. Forked is the term for code editing. A pull request is an e-note sent to the original code writer requesting edit rights. So there's a fundamental misunderstanding in sort of the media of what goes on with code editing and collaboration. And that's not their fault. It's just really complicated. It took me a long time to figure out Git. I'm sure I know many people have had this experience that you go from Subversion to Git and you're like, run away, and eventually you sort of come back and slowly figure it out. But it's complicated. It's not an easy thing, even though it's based on a relatively simple thing. So you can kind of see here, there's red and green on both of those. Git is just based on a simple diff process. You look at version before, the version after. The computer does a comparison and tells you what's changed. Normally Git is line-based, so we have a line that's changed here. This is from OpenSSL. I don't know if the NSA made this change or not, it's also a relatively fragile approach to sort of version control. So here's the simplest possible thing. So we have Mary had a misspelled little sheep. Someone suggests a correction. Mary had a little sheep, and now little is spelled properly. So we accept this change and merge them together, and that's successful, no problem. But at the same time, someone else suggested that we change sheep to lamb because that's what it should be. And when we do this merge, Git tells us auto merging Mary, conflict content, merge conflict in Mary, automatic merge failed, fix conflicts, and then keep the result. Great, thanks Git. Right, so this is a big problem if we want regular people to be able to use Git and sort of access that incredible power that it gives us in terms of collaboration and across distance and time. Here's the conflict resolution process. Git just sort of throws up, here are the 2 lines, you figure it out. And where's that? Linus doesn't care. And the reason that Linus doesn't care, besides being a Git, is because he has tests. He has code that can run, like you can run tests against the code. And if the tests pass, then the code is fine. Doesn't matter what the code looks like, the test passes, fine. If the tests don't pass, the code's not fine, it needs to be fixed. It's fairly straightforward. And if the code doesn't work after the merge, the tests don't catch it, then he waits for someone to write another test, and then he fixes the code and it's fine. Emily here didn't have this advantage, and we probably won't have this advantage with prose for a very long time, not until we have artificial intelligences that we can trust with creative expression. You can't run tests against literature, you can't run tests against poetry, you can't run tests against prose because it's subjective. It's fairly straightforward, but it's true. So what we need to do is sort of reframe the question of how we do sort of conflict resolution and move away from this very technological solution that Git offers us into something that's more understandable by people. So if we reframe things a little bit like this, rather than having a diff where computers computed changes, we change the way we think about the problem in general, and say, okay, well, the change that needs to happen here is that you need to add a T to little to fix the spelling mistake. And likewise, change the sheep to lamb in order to fix the conceptual problem there. If we approach things this way, we won't get conflicts because essentially a person needs to go through all of these and reason about them one by one. And we can construct something that behaves like Git, but is approachable to people. So this is sort of what I'm trying to do with Poetica. And it's really about taking the things that people do. So this is effective copy editing. This is what it looks like. And it's about having this conversation on the page. And it's about having sort of an effortlessly expressive conversation. So any editor can write whatever they want, and they can draw whatever they want onto these pages, and that means that they can sort of communicate with the author. And it means that this handwriting in the shape of it, there are people in these words, and so when people are writing and exchanging these ideas, it feels like there's a person there, and so you can sort of feel like you trust the person who wrote those comments. You can have a sense of, over time you get to know the writing, and you get a sense of their opinions and what opinions you can disregard, what opinions you need to focus on, and you end up feeling like you can collaborate and you can trust people. So this is a screenshot of Poetica, where this is web-based, where we've taken kind of these precepts and said, look, let's make it look friendly. We'll remove computers from to conversation, and we'll make it so that people can communicate with each other, rather than trying to, throw up error messages saying, there's a conflict, you need to resolve it. I think this is really, really important, and especially as computers get better. One of the things that surprised me about building this is that it's able to do this on the web, and it's getting easier to do really surprising things. So here's a little video of, we re-implemented highlighting in the browser, because I don't like the way that highlighting works on tablets. So basically you keep on selecting, you just keep on dragging, so you move your finger over the text, and it'll join selections together, which is amazing on the tablet because you don't have those stupid toggle things that are so infuriating. And it also means that you can select sort of disjoint things, which often you want to do when you're copy editing. You want to be able to say these things are redundant, or you're repeating yourself, or you're conflicting yourself, and you sort of have to be able to deal with multiple things at once. So this is a bit of a departure, because mostly the interfaces that we have, the operating system level text editing fields, have been optimized for sort of writing basic text. They haven't been optimized for collaboration because we haven't had the ability to collaborate until relatively recently. This idea of having even GitHub and Git are really only 5 or 10 years old as far as most programmers are sort of concerned, and so these sort of like network-based collaboration interactions are really new, and being able to do this sort of thing is driven a lot by technologies like Google Wave. They got the interface really, really wrong, but there's some really interesting technology in that stuff that they did that enables us to do these sorts of things. So to take a step back a little bit, because I talk about book because it's kind of all I think about these days, but I want to step back and sort of talk about technology in general, because this is what we're all doing. And I think, we can, everything that we deal with now is information, so that this editorial process, this process of giving feedback and getting feedback and collaborating with other people, we can do to everything. It doesn't stop at writing, it doesn't stop at code, it doesn't stop at electronics, it doesn't stop at images or anything. It's absolutely everything is manipulatable. So with hardware, we can collaborate and come up with totally crazy new ideas relatively cheaply, and we can collaborate on them. And this is a friend, Jesse Vincent in Boston, who's working on this, I think it's keyboard.io, not entirely sure, but he's basically working on sort of 3D printed optimized keyboard layouts, because he just wasn't happy with the keyboards that he tried. And he's done, this one was in February, surprise, but I think he's done 30 odd different keyboard layouts, and he's just trying all sorts of different ones. It's kind of amazing, and he's collaborating with people all over the world. Things like, I think this is a node copter taking a picture of its controller, and being able to manipulate these tools is a big deal. And the fact that we're able to manipulate these tools as sort of random individuals, and not the government, because before this you had to work at Northrop Grumman to get that kind of picture, it's a really big deal, in how we collaborate, how we think about the tools that we're building matters a lot. So I was very fortunate to work at Twitter in the very early days. It's weird to see the IPO thing happening so many years later, but this is basically where it started. There was this project called TextMob, which was a sort of an activist communications network things that we do can actually have a real lasting impact, and the sort of node-copter stuff and various other hardware things that people are building, that's going to have a big impact, and we need to be thinking about sort of where that impact lies. This is Jack Dorsey's cell phone 7 years ago. So this was sort of the state of the art. And I think sort of thinking ahead, the SMS thing was a bit of a red herring in that it was irrelevant a year later when the iPhone came out. But having a story about being mobile and sort of, this is where we're going, but being responsive in that way of like, we're creating Twitter out in public, because it's an important thing. And this is a frontline SMS. I think that this is basically what Twitter looked like for the first 6 months. There's a laptop hooked up to a cell phone. So, I think Andrew has a few GSM test equipment, test boxes at his place, and it's kind of amazing to think that that was as good as we could do 7 years ago, and here we are today. Sadly, the workshop's not happening tomorrow, but you can do software-defined radio on a 10-pound DVD adapter. That's insane, and it's going to shape our world. This is a recent Kickstarter called Brick from Ushahidi, which is a sort of a device that you can put out into really ruggedized environments, and it provides internet access. The goal is to provide internet access in areas that just don't have reliable internet access or sort of can't have communications on the ground. So all of these things, like this thing is on the web. There was the creator, the Raspberry Pi creator thing that was released yesterday from Google. And it's basically like a little node server that you start up and some sort of SD card thing you put into the Raspberry Pi. I'm not playing with it yet. So basically it gives you a browser-based environment to write in JavaScript everything for the Raspberry Pi. And it takes a couple of minutes to get set up. These things are incredible. But we have to define how it works. So for me, Poetica is about looking at, there are these technologies that I can see that are high tech, but inaccessible to most people. And I get to help define how we can make that more accessible for a whole world of people that really need these tools but don't have access to build them. Not yet, but it's getting there. But this idea that the mechanism of language and communication, it's not out of our hands, it's in our hands, and we need to take control of that. This is Jack Dorsey hanging out with Rupert Murdoch on his yacht. That's weird. That's really weird. And I think we need to sort of guard against this. I always sort of like to talk about this because Jack's just a hacker. But Twitter is turning into this ad revenue platform thing. But actually, it's way more interesting if we can build open things that empower us all, and we can. So I guess all of this is just to say, when you're out there building things and when you're thinking about how to build things and thinking about the tools and what you want to do and what other people want to do, think about the